What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Terrence Bud Crawford. The man has finally responded to Keith Thurman, as I knew he would do eventually. And he posted a tweet, and he was like, damn, at Keith Thurman, you weren't that impressed with me. So if I was that unimpressive, why the fuck don't you come and take this belt? He also said that a fight was offered to you from this non-impressive guy, this little guy, right? Well, in fact, I'm not impressed with you either. You know, I knew it was a time, or it would be a time, when Terence Crawford will say something about Keith Thurman. Because Keith Thurman, he has been bumping his gums a long time about Terence Crawford ever since he has learned that he's came to the welterweight division. At first, he was like, oh, he has to get a belt. Then he gets a belt. Oh, who did he get the belt against? Jeff Horn. Who's Jeff Horn? Then, oh, fight Amir Khan. Then he fights Amir Khan, beats Amir Khan. Then, oh, I'm not that impressed. I'm not that impressed with him. Look, Keith Thurman is the WBA welterweight champion of the world, ex-unified champion of the world. And he did that by going 24 rounds with Danny Garcia and Shawn Porter. Okay. Now, if you look at these two, at his resume is decent. But compared to someone like Terence Crawford, putting Terence Crawford down, I think it shows a sign of fear. And a lot of people, what they do, they criticize the person that they fear by putting a wedge in between them, by saying they're not really that impressive. He's not really impressive. He's this, at welterweight, he hasn't proved himself. And between Keith Thurman made a whole fight, a potential super fight, fizz out. You remember Keith Thurman and Errol Spence? Remember that? You don't really hear too much about that now. But you know what you hear about? You hear about Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. So essentially, Terence Crawford has came to your division, a division that you're supposed to be running, right? With two sanctioning bodies. They stripped you for one. That's why Shawn Porter has the belt. And came to your division and basically took your slot. On top of being pound for pound now, mind you. So this is no different from Floyd. This is no different from Manny Pacquiao. He was a smaller guy coming up into welterweight to dominate all the fighters up there. And then they're acting like, all of them, including Keith Thurman, they're acting like, oh, well, I'm not impressed. And Errol Spence says, I'll fight him, but it's political and it's side of the street and all that. But back to Keith Thurman. How you let Terence Bud Crawford, coming from 140, undisputed 140-pound champion, pound for pound. How you let him come up and take what you supposed to own or run? How do you do that? And then have the nerve to sit there and talk about the guy. Yeah, there's a reason he called him out. And in fact, there's more. Terence Crawford went on to say in another article that if Keith Thurman beats Manny Pacquiao, he wants Keith Thurman. See, Keith, sometimes I think he lets his mouth write a check that his ass can't cash, because it's one thing to avoid a fighter. Don't even mention a fighter. That's one way. But he clearly ducked Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford offered him a fight. He didn't want it. Oh, this is my get back year, and I ain't been in the ring. This motherfucker been out of the ring for 2 years, damn near right at 2 years, right? And then he got beat up when he came back by a journeyman. No disrespect to Josecito Lopez, but he's a journeyman at this point. And I was hoping he would knock out Keith Thurman, because people like Keith Thurman, they get to a certain plateau and they get there and they figure they can keep that position by doing nothing and live off their past attributes and achievements. That's what Keith Thurman's trying to do. And he's trying to hang on that long enough to get a fight like he's got. See, that's what Keith Thurman wanted. He didn't want a tough fight with Errol Spence because Errol Spence might go in there and probably beat the shit out of him. You know what I mean? He didn't want that type of risk. He didn't want a high risk fight. Like a lot of those fighters don't want a high risk fight. They want a fight that they can easily win. That's another problem with the PBC. Okay? That's how they're orchestrated. They got these top echelon fighters supposedly, but none of these guys are fighting each other. And Keith Thurman is no exception. So while Keith Thurman's sitting there talking about Terence Crawford is actually trying to make a fight with him. And I think he should fight. And then basically, he's going to get to a point if he beats Manny Pacquiao. And if he doesn't, who cares? Nobody will care about Keith Thurman if he gets beat by Manny Pacquiao. Okay? Manny Pacquiao is that guy. And I hope he does win. I'm rooting for Pacquiao. You know, I haven't done the fight study. I'll do that later. But, you know, if Manny beats Keith, this will all go away. Keith will be once upon a time Thurman. Okay? Once upon a time, because all it takes is one ass beating from Keith Thurman after being out of the ring for 2 years. Okay, so it doesn't really matter. But Terence Crawford is one of those guys. You talk enough shit about him, he's gonna respond. He might be humble or quiet, but it's always those humble and quiet guys you don't want to piss off. You don't want to do it. And I think he's actually waking up a sleeping giant by talking about Terence Crawford. Now, you've asked for it or you've talked enough shit, now you're going to get it. And the question is, what is Keith Thurman going to do? Is he going to run and hide and still is he going to have another get back year? Or, you know what I mean? He's going to eventually have to fight someone, you know, instead of waiting and waiting and waiting, you know. Like Errol Spence said, he might get another injury. Oh, he'll be injured again. But anyway, Terence Crawford means business. Terence Crawford is the truth. That's why you got to put your hat off, take your hat off to a guy like Terence Crawford, because he wants to show people that he's the best. He doesn't hide behind politics. He doesn't hide behind all that bullshit. He doesn't hide behind any of that, because these fights can happen. The networks and all that, that's just, I'm like Tyson Fury. It's all an excuse at the end of the day. Somebody don't want to make a fight. And in this case, it's Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman wanted Manny Pacquiao. He has him. If he wanted Errol Spence, he would have had Errol Spence. He didn't want Errol Spence. He don't want Terence Crawford. He wants an easy touch how he thinks, but karma's a bitch. Boxing is the sport that I love, that I hate so much for a reason. And stranger things has happened. So anyway, you guys tell me what you think about Terence Crawford. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.